Hello and welcome back to Revenge Handler. I'm Mike, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today I have a story for you from the pros. I know you're going to enjoy it. Let's go ahead and jump right in. This story comes to us from Reddit, and I have to warn you, he went to surprise his wife at work, and the security guard laughed in his face. After you hear this one, drop a rating in the comments. Out of 10, how good is this revenge? Let's see what everyone thinks. If you're new here, hit subscribe. This channel is built for people who believe that karma always finds its way. And save this channel. Bookmark it, because when the betrayal comes to you, and it will, you'll want to know exactly how to handle it. That's what we're here for. The security guard laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A genuine, bewildered, echoing laugh. The kind that bounces off marble floors and lodges itself permanently in your memory. Gerald had just told the man behind the desk that he was there to see his wife, and the guard looked at him, tilted his head, and said, "Sir, I see your husband every day. He just left 10 minutes ago." And then he pointed. There he is coming back right now. Gerald turned around, and the man walking through that lobby was not a stranger. He was Frank Sterling, his wife's vice president, a man who had apparently been introduced as Lauren's husband every single day. To the one person who would never be able to keep that secret forever. 28 years. That was the number Gerald kept returning to as he walked back to his car that afternoon. 28 years of marriage, shared meals, mortgage payments, inside jokes, vacations, and the kind of daily intimacy that makes two people believe they know each other completely. He was 56 years old. He had built his life around this woman. And in the space of 30 seconds in a corporate lobby, everything he believed about that life had been exposed as fiction. Gerald was an accountant. Methodical, careful, precise, a man who trusted numbers because numbers didn't lie. Lauren was the opposite in every way that mattered. A CO, magnetic, the kind of woman who commanded a room simply by entering it. They'd met nearly 30 years ago, and what Gerald had always loved most about their partnership was what he thought of as its simplicity. She drove the ambition. He provided the foundation. She built the career. He kept the home. It had worked for decades, or so he believed. She'd always said she valued his steadiness, his reliability, the way he never needed to be the loudest person in the room. He'd taken that as a compliment. He was about to learn it had been a polite way of saying something far more brutal. Frank had joined Meridian Technologies 3 years earlier. Lauren had mentioned him occasionally. Frank closed another deal. Frank's ideas about the international expansion are interesting. Always professional. Always passing. Never a name that raised any alarm. Gerald hadn't been jealous. That wasn't his nature. He trusted Lauren the way you trust a foundation. Not because you check it every day, but because nothing has ever given you reason to question it. Rate this story so far out of 10 in the comments. Drop your number right now. Because we're just getting started. He should have been questioning it for years. When Gerald got home that afternoon, his hands were still numb from gripping the coffee cup he'd carried into that lobby. The latte he'd made for Lauren. The small surprise he'd thought might brighten her day. He sat in his car in their driveway for a long time before going inside. The red brick colonial looked exactly the same as it always had. Lauren's garden along the front walk. Their names on the mailbox. Everything perfectly intact. Everything built on something that was apparently rotting underneath. That night, she came home at 9:30. Heels on hardwood. Keys on the hall table. The sound of 1,000 ordinary evenings. She appeared in the kitchen doorway looking like exactly what she was. A successful CEO after a long day. Tired but composed. Genuinely glad to see him. He asked how her day was. She said exhausting. Then he said, carefully, that he'd brought her coffee that afternoon to the office. Her hand paused for just a fraction of a second reaching for a glass. Then she smiled. Said she hadn't gotten any coffee. He told her he'd given it to Frank to pass along. Another pause. So brief he might have imagined it. Oh! Frank mentioned someone stopped by. Back-to-back meetings all afternoon. She said, must have missed you. She poured her wine. Her hands were perfectly steady. Gerald watched her and understood he was looking at either the most innocent woman in the world or the most accomplished liar he had ever met. After 28 years of marriage, he was terrified to find out which. The rest of that evening was theater, news on television, weekend plans discussed. The bedtime routine followed like a script neither of them had written that night, but both performed perfectly. And when Lauren fell asleep beside him, Gerald lay in the dark staring at the ceiling, calculating. 3 years since Frank joined the company. How many late nights? How many business trips? How many times had that name been mentioned in passing? Conditioning him to accept the presence of a man who had apparently been living a version of his life while he sat home making dinner for one. He didn't sleep. The next morning, he called his office and said he'd be working from home. Then he started doing what accountants do. He looked at everything. Her home office first. Work papers, letterhead, business cards, nothing suspicious. But then, in the back of a drawer, a restaurant receipt. Chez Lauren, the French place downtown where they'd celebrated their anniversary 3 years running. Dated 6 weeks ago. 2 entrees. 1 bottle of wine. No client entertainment charges. No appetizers ordered to impress. Just a dinner for 2, the kind Gerald had believed was reserved for them. He remembered that night clearly. Lauren had told him she was having dinner with a female client from Portland. He'd been proud of her. He'd been sitting home proud of a lie. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Hit it now, because this man's accounting skills are about to become the most satisfying weapon you've ever watched someone use. Then he found Lauren's laptop open on the kitchen counter. A calendar notification in the corner of the screen. Frank Sterling had sent a dinner invitation. Tonight, 7 p.m. Bellacourt, the Italian restaurant where Lauren had proposed to Gerald 17 years earlier. He scrolled. He shouldn't have. He knew that, but he scrolled anyway. And what he found wasn't just an affair. It was a schedule. Coffee with F every Tuesday at 8 a.m. dinner every other Thursday. A weekend spa retreat 3 months ago that Lauren had told him was a women's executive conference. A parallel life. Organized, recurring, maintained with the same precision she applied to her corporate calendar. Gerald wasn't a footnote in this schedule. He wasn't even on it. He sat with this for a moment. Then he closed the laptop, picked up his keys, and made a decision that the Gerald of 24 hours earlier would never have made. He drove to Harborview Apartments across town. He'd found the key in their junk drawer that morning. Brass, worn smooth at the edges, attached to a keychain for a complex he'd never heard of. He sat in the visitor parking lot, watching Frank's Mercedes pull into a numbered space. Watched Frank carry groceries inside with the easy familiarity of a man coming home. Then he waited 10 minutes. Then he used the key. Apartment 214 was not a hiding place. It was a home, fully furnished, lived in. Photos on the mantle. Lauren and Frank at the company Christmas party. His arm around her waist, possessive and intimate. The two of them on a beach Gerald didn't recognize. Lauren in a sundress he'd never seen, laughing while Frank kissed her cheek. Her left hand in every photo conspicuously bare of the wedding ring she wore at home. Her clothes in the shared closet. Her perfume on the dresser. Her contact solution in the bathroom. The expensive face cream she'd told Gerald was too costly to repurchase when she'd run out 6 months ago, sitting right there next to Frank's cologne. And on the kitchen counter, a folder, labeled in Lauren's handwriting. Future plans. House listings in Frank's name. Vacation brochures for trips Gerald had never heard her mention. A business restructuring plan from Meridian Technologies, with Frank as CEO and Lauren as president. And at the bottom of the folder, a consultation summary from a family law firm. Lauren had met with them twice in 4 months. The document outlined her divorce strategy in clinical detail. She planned to file citing emotional abandonment. She had been documenting Gerald's quiet evenings at home as evidence of emotional withdrawal. His satisfaction with his modest accounting practice was being framed as lack of ambition. His contentment with their life together was being rewritten as inability to support her growth. She had been building this case against him for 2 years. While he cooked dinner and trusted her completely, she had been systematically constructing the narrative of his inadequacy. Gerald photographed everything, every page, every photo, every line of that legal summary. Save this channel right now. Bookmark it. Because the day someone does this to you, you're going to need to know exactly what to do next. And Gerald was about to show everyone. He went home. He said nothing that night. He waited until Monday morning, when he sat down across from a lawyer named David Morrison, the same firm Lauren had consulted about divorcing him, and laid every photograph and document on the desk between them. David reviewed it all slowly. Then he looked up and said that in 30 years of practice, this was one of the most calculated divorce strategies he had ever seen. Gerald nodded. Then he opened a second folder, his own, because Gerald had spent the weekend doing what accountants do when they finally decide to look at the numbers honestly. He had gone through every bank statement, every credit card charge, every joint financial record they owned. And what he found reframed everything. Lauren earned $200,000 a year. Their joint expenses had been running $60,000 more than her salary for 3 years. Gerald had been contributing $80,000 annually from his own practice to their joint account, believing he was being generous, believing they were building a shared future. What he had actually been doing was subsidizing Lauren's secret life. The apartment, the dinners, the weekend trips, the gifts. Every expense from a life he knew nothing about had been quietly funded by money he earned and deposited into an account he trusted her with completely. David used one word for it: fraud. But Gerald wasn't done. He had spent the weekend reviewing something else entirely: the publicly available corporate filings from Meridian Technologies. And what he found there was a second weapon in a case that was becoming impossible to defend against. Lauren had been systematically transferring responsibilities to Frank, responsibilities that required board approval, without ever presenting the reorganization officially. She had been restructuring the company around her personal relationship without the board's knowledge. The conflict of interest had never been disclosed. The plan had never been voted on. The board had no idea what had been happening under their CEO's authority for 3 years. Gerald picked up the phone and called Richard Hayes, the chairman of Meridian's board. He kept it factual. No personal details. No emotion. Just the information a board chairman had a right to know about unauthorized corporate restructuring and undisclosed conflicts of interest. Richard listened without interrupting. His questions grew sharper with every minute. When they hung up, Gerald sat in his office in the quiet that follows a decision that cannot be unmade, and he felt something he hadn't felt in days: clarity. That evening, Lauren came home with a composure cracked for the first time. Richard had called her. The board had announced a corporate governance review. She walked into the kitchen with her face tight and her eyes hard, and she asked Gerald what he thought he was doing. He told her he had shared factual information about corporate reorganization that appeared to lack proper authorization. Nothing more. She told him he was destroying everything she'd built. He told her she had done that herself. He was just refusing to help cover it up. She stared at him for a long moment, and he could see it happening in real time. The recalibration, the recognition that the man she had counted on to remain passive and predictable had become something she hadn't prepared for. Drop your rating in the comments. Out of 10, how clean is this? Share this with someone who needs to see it today. Subscribe if this is your first time here, because this is a channel for people who believe the score always gets settled. And save it, not for today. For the day someone gives you a reason to need it. He filed for divorce the next morning. And with the evidence already assembled, the adultery, the financial fraud, the documented manipulation of the divorce strategy itself, Lauren's carefully constructed narrative collapsed before it could ever be used against him. The settlement was equitable in ways her original plan would never have allowed. Gerald kept the house. Lauren kept the retirement accounts and half the savings, minus what she'd spent maintaining a secret life on his money. Fair, clean, documented. The corporate governance review was thorough. The board found no criminal violations, but they found a pattern of unauthorized decision-making and undisclosed conflict of interest that permanently damaged Lauren's credibility as a leader. Frank was terminated immediately. His position had been contingent on uncompromised professional judgment, and a romantic relationship with the CEO was an irreconcilable conflict of interest. Lauren kept her job, barely. She was placed on probation. Her decision-making authority was restricted. The woman who had built her entire identity around professional autonomy was now required to report every significant decision to a newly appointed supervisor. The apartment at Harbor View was quietly given up. Frank relocated to Denver. Lauren moved into a modest one-bedroom closer to her office. The empire they had been planning together had been replaced by consequences neither of them had factored into the spreadsheet. 6 months later, Gerald was standing in the kitchen of his own apartment, smaller than the house, completely his, making coffee in the morning sunlight and finding genuine peace in the simplicity of it. The divorce was finalized. The house had been sold. The weight of living inside someone else's deception had lifted in ways he hadn't anticipated, because he hadn't fully understood how heavy it was until it was gone. He had started dating. Her name was Margaret, a widow he met through his church. Honest, warm, genuinely content with quiet evenings and real conversation. She found his steadiness charming rather than limiting, his loyalty a gift rather than an expectation. He had been with her for 3 months when Lauren called for the first time since the divorce was finalized. He almost didn't answer. Then he did. Lauren's voice was tired, older somehow. She said she wanted to apologize for how everything had happened, for the way she'd handled things. She said she'd had time to think, and that Gerald hadn't deserved what she'd put him through. He told her no, he hadn't. She said she convinced herself the marriage was already over, that she was just being honest about reality, but the truth was she had ended it long before she admitted it to herself. She ended it the day she decided he wasn't enough, instead of working with him to build something better. Gerald asked what had prompted the reflection. Lauren made a sound that carried no humor in it. Frank and I lasted 6 weeks after he moved to Denver, she said. Turns out our great love affair was more about the excitement of secrecy than about actually wanting to live together day to day. Gerald told her he was sorry to hear that. She asked if he really was. He considered it honestly. Yes, he said. He was sorry she had thrown away 28 years for something that wasn't real. Sorry she had hurt so many people chasing something that didn't exist. Sorry she had discovered too late that what they had was actually valuable. He told her that even in this apology, she was still making it about herself, still focused on the outcome that hadn't worked out for her, rather than the damage she had caused along the way. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said he was right. He told her he hoped she found peace. She told him she hoped he was happy. He told her he was. Her name was Margaret, and she was everything Lauren had never been. Honest, kind, and capable of love without conditions or exit strategies. After he hung up, Gerald sat on his small balcony as the sun finished setting, and he felt something he hadn't expected. Gratitude. Not for the pain, not for the years of being deceived, but for the freedom that had come disguised as loss, for the clarity that had arrived at the cost of everything he thought he had. Lauren had been right about one thing. They both deserved to be with someone who truly understood them. She deserved someone capable of the same level of calculation she had perfected, and Gerald deserved someone whose love didn't come with an expiration date and a legal strategy. At 56, starting over in a small, honest apartment, making coffee alone in the morning light, he was finally exactly where he belonged. Drop your rating out of 10 in the comments right now. I want to see the numbers. Share this with someone who's been someone else's foundation while they quietly plan their exit. Subscribe if this is your first time here. You found the right channel. And save it. Bookmark it, because the day the betrayal hits, you won't be looking for advice. You'll already be here,